All right, welcome back to Love Wins, where the truth matters because it's the truth that sets us free. I started this YouTube channel with a very specific goal in mind, and that's to bring the truth to people who have been in church but aren't in church or are almost out the door. I've come to the realization over many years, both in the church as a believer and a Christian and as a pastor, as a leader, working with people, that church unfortunately isn't always the place you find truth. And the worst part about it is that you think you found truth, or you hear things that you assume are true because it's the church that's saying it. So let me start with a story. When I was in high school, I became friends with a girl, and could have been more. I think we both were interested in it being more. But there was a problem. She belonged to a church, and I belonged to a church, and they were not the same church. And mine was very conservative, and hers was very conservative. Mine was less controlling, hers was more controlling. And it wasn't going to work. And so the only way it ever could have worked is if we came to an agreement of either she came to my church or I came to hers, or we found another path. But as it wasn't going to work. So we agreed that I would visit her church, she would visit my church, and then we'd see where it went from there. So I went to her church first, and it was odd. Everybody knew my name, like they were expecting me. It was weird. And then she gave me a couple of books actually, to read, and she never came to my church. And I found out later that even though she didn't tell me herself, she was never going to come to my church because she wasn't allowed to come to my church. Just as an aside to this video, and maybe something we'll talk about in a future video, if your church tells you what you can and cannot do, and where you can and cannot go, and what you can hear and watch and read and whatever, no. God doesn't do that. Anyways, she gave me these two books, and the first book was just a book, and I read it, and its opening statement or opening paragraph made this claim that they were the only organization on earth that was spreading the truth about Jehovah. And that alarmed me first by its arrogance, and then it alarmed me more by the realization of my church kind of, not that bluntly, but kind of thinks the same way. And then the other book was a series of teachings explaining what they believe. And it was basically paragraphs of narration with Bible verses thrown in to support what was being said. And as I read through that, I had been in church long enough and had done enough of my own Bible reading and such that I knew what was being said wasn't true, and that the Bible verses themselves were being taken out of context. They were not, if you actually went back to the Bible, looked up the verses, they weren't saying at all what this book was trying to make them say. But something else alarmed me about that not only was this book set up that way, but literally you could set up any argument, any truth, any narrative, sprinkle Bible verses into it and make it seem legitimate. And then I realized that when we give people Bible studies, we also give them pamphlets that are narration with Bible verses sprinkled in. It's a method of studying the Bible that is the weakest of any possible method and the most prone to being manipulative and deceptive and flat out untrue. So why am I telling you this? We started this series with the verse in Revelation that says, Babylon is fallen, come out of her, my people. And we've called this series The Tale of Two Kingdoms or Two Empires. And I've been going through the fact that Jesus was introducing a kingdom that we are not familiar with, that we don't understand, and that we're literally blind to. And I showed you last video that Jesus himself is the kingdom. It's not some empire like the Romans had. It's not some empire like King Solomon and the Jews had. It's not some empire like the Greeks had. It's nothing like that. He is the kingdom. just a simple verse that we can quickly pass over. When God led Abraham, which Abraham's story is a foundational story in Scripture, you really should get familiar with it if you want to understand the Bible. When God led Abraham in his life, and Abraham was getting frustrated because he wasn't having children that God had promised, God came to him and said, Abraham, I am your shield. I am your exceedingly great reward. You could have millions of children, Abraham, and it would never satisfy the longing in your heart. It would never give you the peace. It would never give you the sense of having arrived, of being okay with yourself and the world. It would never accomplish any of that. I am your shield. I am your exceedingly great reward. Fast forward to the Bible, to the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The disciples are following Jesus around, and they've been born and raised with this idea that this Jesus Messiah figure is going to overthrow the Romans and set up this new empire. And you find snippets, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, of them going away from Jesus, holding back as they travel, putting distance between them and him so he can't hear them, and having discussions and arguments over the hierarchy amongst them. Who's going to be his right-hand man? Who's going to be on his left side? Who's the best? Who's, you know how it goes. Never did they have any arguments about who was the least among them or who was going to be the servant of them. No. Who was the greatest? If you want a practical snapshot of this problem among the disciples, when they arrived to celebrate the Last Supper with Jesus, it was customary when you arrived at someone's home, because of the sandals and the dirty roads and whatever, it was customary to have either the youngest person in the home or the youngest able person or servant to meet guests at the door with a basin of water and a towel and to wash their feet. So Jesus had asked the disciples to prepare everything for the supper, and they had prepared, and they had the water, and they had the basin, the towel, they had everything ready. But when they arrived, they realized there was one preparation that they did not make. They had never decided who's going to do the washing. So no one did. Because to do it would have been an acknowledgement, I'm the least of this group. And they didn't want to do that. And in the end, you know what happened. Jesus got up and he did it. Prior to this, and shortly prior to this, as they were traveling to Jerusalem, James and John's mother came to Jesus privately with her boys, and she requested that when he set up his kingdom, that one be on the right and one be on the left. So I'm going to read it for you so that it's not my words. I want to read it as it is. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to him with her sons, kneeling down and asking something from him. And he said to her, "What do you wish?" She said to him, "Grant that these two sons of mine may sit, one on your right hand and the other on your left, in your kingdom." But Jesus answered and said, "You do not know what you're asking for. Are you able to drink the cup that I'm about to drink and be baptized with the baptism that I'll be baptized with?" And they, James and John, said to him, "We are able." So he said to them, "You will indeed drink my cup and be baptized with the baptism that I'm baptized with. But to sit on my right and on my left is not mine to give. It is for those for whom it was prepared by my Father." When the 10 heard what was going on, they were greatly displeased with the two brothers. Jesus called them all to himself and said, "You know that the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who are great exercise authority over them. Yet it shall not be so among you." Now, before we go any further, he's saying, you guys know how it is. In the world, they have these pyramids, the king's at the top, and then he's got his officials, and then down and down it goes, and the people are at the bottom. He says, you know that's how it is. You're seeking that kind of a kingdom. You're trying to climb the ladder and get to as close to the peak as you can get. It shall not be so among you. This is Matthew 20, verse 26. Whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant. Whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. They're blind. That's why I've spent so much time in this series. Some of you probably watched this series going, I thought we were talking about two empires. Why is he talking about blindness all the time? Because we can't see the kingdom. Jesus told Nicodemus when he came that night, unless you're born again, you will never see the kingdom. Not that you won't enter the kingdom. You won't even see it. The kingdom could be right in front of you and you wouldn't recognize it because Jesus was the kingdom. He was right in front of them. It was a completely different kind of kingdom and they could not see it. They couldn't see it. And there's tons of Christians today who are empire builders. Whether they're building a nationalistic empire in their country or whether they're building an empire of wealth or whether they're building an empire of power, whatever they're doing, they're trying to build some kind of human empire here. It's everywhere. Jesus was nothing like that. He wanted nothing to do with it. That's why when I see Christians getting involved in political movements and getting involved in this nonsense and that nonsense and rah-rahing about this and hoop-hooping about that, Jesus never did those things. He never did them. So now to bring it full circle, the most terrible way to study the Bible is to have your own ideas and find Bible verses to support them and sprinkle them in throughout. Terrible. A better way to study the Bible is to actually, instead of plucking verses out like flowers out of a garden, is to actually read the whole story and see what's this story about. And then I've realized in the Gospels that not only is it studying each story for itself, but that the stories have been arranged in such a way as to teach an even bigger truth, which we'll do and show in other videos. But recently, I've come to the realization there's an even better way to understand the Bible. And that is to understand that it's all about Jesus. If you want to know if your ideas are heading in the right direction, compare them to Jesus' ideas. If you want to know if your actions are anywhere close to right, compare them to Jesus' actions. If you want to know if your attitude towards certain groups of people is right or wrong, compare them to how Jesus interacted with people. If you want to know the truth, he is the truth. There are too many people, even in my own church, who think that Jesus is part of the story in the Bible. There's Abraham, and there's Moses, and there's Jesus, and there's this, and there's that. No. Abraham's story is about Jesus. Moses' story is about Jesus. King David's story is about Jesus. All the stories are about Jesus. If you actually understand the kingdom, and you understand the theme, and you understand what's being told to you, if the blindness is healed, you can see Jesus and his kingdom everywhere. And it's not like the kingdom of Babylon. So my church has been known for doing prophecy seminars and really focusing on end time events and stuff. I have come to the realization that as true as much of that may be, if we don't understand the basic principles of the kingdom of Jesus, we will always find ourselves on the wrong side of whatever the conflict is. In fact, in most human conflicts, both sides are wrong. Both sides are just fighting to get to the pinnacle. They want to control the empire. They want to control the narrative. They want to tell what the truth is. Jesus is the truth. He said to his disciples, the kingdom you're looking for, that's the Gentile kingdom. That's the world's kingdom. You know that that's how they operate. Look at me. I'm not pointing at myself. I'm saying, Jesus is speaking, saying, look at me. Did I come here to be served? No. I came here to serve. And I called you to follow me. There's a scene, as I wrap this up, after Jesus resurrects, he goes and he finds the disciples and they're back fishing. And he has a private conversation with Peter, and he tells Peter some of the sufferings, some of the cup that he's going to drink, and the baptism he's going to be baptized with as his life goes on. And Peter points to one of the other disciples and says, "What about him?" And Jesus says, "What is that to you? You follow me." That's the kingdom. Following Jesus is the kingdom because he's the kingdom. It's not more complicated than that. And if we don't know Jesus, we can know prophecy forwards, backwards, inside and out, and we'll still be on the wrong side when it's over. And we won't even see where we went wrong. Jesus isn't part of the story. Jesus is the story. Jesus isn't king of a kingdom. Jesus is the kingdom. We'll see you next time.